Hello, good morning everyone to how many are we here right now? How many students? So we are like mga mga eight students, right? Okay, so all in all we're 10. Okay, so good morning everyone and good evening to Mr. Michael DeAngelis. Uh, if we are for our first webinar in this second semester, our first webinar will be about Introduction to Informative and Audio Play Podcasting. Our speaker is Mr. J. Michael DeAngelis, the Managing Director of the Portroom and co-creator of Mission Rejected and co-host of CS Radio, University of Pennsylvania Career Services Podcast. And I'm actually taking the job of Angel. Angel is formally introducing our speaker. So Angel, take get. I'm giving the mic to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma'am Cecil. Presently, we've come here to listen to and gain knowledge regarding informative and audio play podcasting. New technology always has a heavy impact on education, and podcasting is no different. Podcasting, as one of the latest mediums to emerge into the mainstream, and is one of the forefront technologies in this change. Our first speaker has a distinguished career in this field. He is the managing director of the Porch Room, a film, theater, and podcast company located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, an owner of Extraordinary Missions Limited, and he is on the board of the University of Pennsylvania Career Services podcast as co-host CS Radio. He attained and completed his degree Bachelor of Arts in Theater from Muhlenberg College, including further studies at the Goldsmiths College University of London. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. J. Michael DeAngelis. A virtual round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for having me. It is my honor to be with you this morning, and I'm very excited to talk to you about podcasting. So, as was mentioned, I am the managing director of a company called The Porch Room, and I started that with my friends from school, Pete Barry and John Dalgan. And I think if you want to bring my slides up, I've got some photos of Pete and John, so you know who I'm talking about. And I'll just say that we formed the company originally as a theater company. We all wanted to write, and we all wanted to act, and we all wanted to direct, and we thought the easiest way to get jobs would be to write shows for ourselves and each other.
Wait, wait.
And we had some success with that. Several of our plays were published and performed in New York, which was very exciting. And after several years, it was getting harder and harder to produce plays on our own.
Okay.
They were getting bigger, they were getting more expensive, they were getting more time consuming. Pete and John both got married and had children, and weren't available to be at theater all the time. And so, as podcasting began to take off, I started to suggest that maybe this was an area that we could get into and tell our stories in a different way. So, there's Pete and John. They send their regards to all of you. They were very excited that we were doing this. And as far as podcasting goes, Pete, who I'll be talking about a lot because Pete does all of our editing, sound design, and music. So all of the music that you just heard in the waiting room, that's all by Pete. And John assists in the editing, and we all three of us are writers. So as I said, we wanted to find a way to keep telling our stories that was a way that fit with our budget and our lifestyle. And in 2018, we went to a film festival in Austin, Texas, where they were having a panel about audio fiction. And we heard a lot of great writers talk about how they had moved into podcasting. And by the end of that day, we had created Mission Rejected. And if we go to the next slide, Mission Rejected is a fully scripted, full cast audio comedy, and it is a spoof or parody of Mission Impossible, the TV show, and the movies, the Tom Cruise movies. And it's the story about what would happen if the Tom Cruise character chose not to accept his missions, and they had no choice but to send in backups who are considerably less talented than him. This was an idea that struck us all as very funny, and we started coming up with who these characters might be, and we decided that we were going to move ahead and do it. So I want to give a quick overview of the show and some of the people who were involved in making it, and tell you a little bit about the characters, because as I give my talk, I want you to have some context. So over the next couple slides, I'll just introduce you to some of the people who helped make the show and their characters. So on the left there, that is Chris Klinecki, is Skip Granger. Skip is the leader of our team. He's very accident prone. He's very nervous, but he's very, very proud of his job. He's very proud they've been chosen to do this. And he is, in his own way, a very strong leader. Nazlı Sarpkaya, who is an actress from Turkey, who lives in New York, she plays Mackenzie McGrath. Mackenzie McGrath is a computer hacker who got caught and is forced to work with the team instead of going to jail. But over time, she and Skip become best friends. This is Dave Stanger. He plays Bowden Moncrief. Bowden is an actor. He is a very minor sitcom actor. He starred on a show that was a ripoff of Friends. But he is a fantastic actor. He's just not had as much success as he maybe would like, and has fallen into the spy game instead. He's very good. He can do perfect impersonation of any voice he hears, which makes him a great spy. And he actually falls in love with the team's intern, played by Paige Klinecki, and that is Gloria. And Gloria is a White House intern. She was working for the President of the United States, but decided to switch to working for our team of spies instead. She thought that would be more rewarding. She was correct. So that's our main team, and I'll talk a little bit now about what we need to do to make the show happen. So We started recording the show in 2019. And so for the whole first season of the show, we were able actually to record it very much like people would record a radio show. The cast gathered together in my house, and we had microphones, and they would do the show almost live. We would get as many folks together as we could, and we just had a great time performing the show. We would read the entire script through, and then we record it scene by scene. I would direct the actors, and Pete would do the technical direction. He knew I need a little bit of a scream here, or I need you to be out of breath here, because he knows that we need to fill things sonically. I was very fortunate to hear one of the projects that you all did, the audio play about Christmas, and obviously, though it was not in English, I was still able to follow a good bit of that story because of the sound effects and the music and the emotion of the actors. So it's so important when you're working solely in the realm of audio, when you don't have the visual of the stage or of a camera, that you have to rely completely on our ears to fill in those blanks. So I'm always so grateful that Pete's in the room with me to remind me, we're not going to see that. So make sure that like he makes a little cough or something, or somebody is startled when someone comes in the room, because it'll help the audience picture in their mind what happens. And then Pete was assisted throughout our first year and a half by Karen Yang, who was a student of mine at the University of Pennsylvania, who also helped me produce the CS Radio podcast. She was our recording supervisor. So she was actually on headset, making sure that the levels were balanced, making sure that no one's microphone was cutting out. And she would say, oh, Chris is much, much louder than Nasla right now. Let's maybe do another take. And a lot of that can be fixed sometimes in editing, but it was just great to have a pair of ears listening on the headphones going, maybe let's fix this. We were very fortunate that Pete is a musician and had a career in doing some audio editing before. So he already had a pair of microphones and a mixing board that he could bring with him. And so those are XLR microphones that you would use like as if you were at a concert, very similar to this setup. This is the setup I use to record CS Radio in our studio, which is really just a conference room at the university. But it's the exact same setup that we use for Mission Rejected when we're recording live. We record into a mixing board, the microphones run into, and then we're able to adjust levels. We're able to adjust the mix. And in certain cases, we don't do it very much, but the mixing board does allow you to add some sound effects, some echo, or maybe some reverb, maybe make somebody sound like a robot. We prefer to do those things in editing, but if you needed to do it sort of quick and dirty, the recording board allows you to do that. In the case of CS Radio, which is an interview show, we actually record that directly onto the board. It has a memory stick in the back that creates a WAV file of the tracks. In the case of Mission Rejected, when we record live, the mixing board we then run into the computer, and Pete records it onto the computer using software called Reaper. But you could do that with any audio software. Yes, on this slide we have, I use Adobe Audition, Pete uses Reaper, other people use Audacity. It's whatever works for you. And you're going to hear me say that a lot this morning for you. Whatever works for you, because podcasting is such a free experience, a free creative experience, that however you get to that finish line is great. So in 2020, starting in March of 2020, obviously the pandemic made it impossible for us to record together in person. And we were really worried if we were going to be able to continue the show. So early on in the pandemic, I just asked Pete and John if they emotionally wanted to continue. And they said yes. And I said, I really want to, because I need something to do during all of this that's positive. And so we reached out to our cast and said, we'll figure out a way to do this if you want to do this. And everybody said, yes, we want to keep doing this. So what we did was we bought everyone in our cast a USB microphone. We were already using them. You can see in the left-hand picture, I had some USB microphones set up in my apartment for the occasional episode where Pete couldn't be there. I don't have them at the time. I didn't have a mixing board, so we would just use these USB microphones plugged into my laptop or into the computer. So we already knew they could get a really good sound quality out of a relatively cheap USB microphone. We like these Blue Yeti microphones. I'm actually using one to talk to you tonight, and they're about $100 US, which in the grand scheme of things, for the quality that we get, is a really good price. So we sent them all to all the actors, and then we would continue to try and record together as much as possible. So I have a screenshot here of when we all met on Zoom and did a recording together. Sometimes we would meet on Discord, any virtual space where we could get together and hear each other do the lines. And then the cast would launch, most of them use something called Audacity, which is a free recording program. They would just be running that in the background. And so I could hear everybody, but I would only get each actor's clean track. So I would get, Chris would upload his track, and it would just be him, and then I would get Nazla's track, and that's very important for when we're editing, so everything is very clean. So it was a really challenging transition, but it worked out great. It took us a little while to get used to doing it this way, but we did essentially 2 years of the show that way. I'm really hoping that starting soon, we're going to be able to do our next season the way we did season 1 back all together, because it's more special to me that way. So once again, there's a variety of microphones on the market. What the question I get asked a lot is like, what do I need to create a podcast? Well, you need a microphone, you need something to record on it. At the most basic level, those are the two things you need. So I do recommend that if you want to create a podcast, that you purchase a microphone. Doesn't have to be an expensive one, but use something beyond what's built into your computer or your phone. Though, if that's what you have, again, whatever works for you. And then something to record onto. Reaper and Audacity both have free versions. They have a little bit of a learning curve as you learn to use them, but they're very easy to learn. And I would say, even though Pete had some professional experience doing audio editing, he had never made anything quite like this, and so he had to sort of retrain himself. But we really did teach ourselves, and the podcasting community online is very friendly. So if we had a question, we might ask on Twitter, or we might ask in a podcasting Reddit, and sort of crowdsource information from other podcasters who gave us great advice. And one of the things I like to do is then pass this on to other new podcasters. So that's why I'm really happy to do this and be here with you today, because somebody helped me along the way. And so I want to pass that on. And then we can look quickly again at the editing slide. Yep, so this is, it's a little blurry, but I tried to take a screenshot of what one of our edits looked like, so that you can see that we have individual tracks laid out for each of the characters alongside on the left. And at the very bottom, you can see some of them have FX tracks on them. So the music track actually has a reverb on it to make the music sound fuller. But let's say the admiral or somebody might be in a cave. We're going to do an example of that later. Have a lot of echo. You would turn that FX track on and just change the portion of the track that's needed. And things like Audition and Reaper have those sound effects built into them. So you can literally go into a menu and say echo, and maybe it even says like cavern, concert hall. So you start from a place close to what you want, and then as you get more experience, you can start to actually tweak those yourself and get them exactly the way you want them. So those are the tools that we use. Those are the people that I'm working with. So I want to walk through a little bit of the process of how we actually make the show, and where we start with the writing all the way through to the producing, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences in creating the informative podcast CS Radio and what's similar and what is different there. So obviously, because this is a scripted podcast, it all begins with the script. And again, one of the things when we started podcasting, we said, what does a podcast script look like? And we asked people doing podcasts, and everybody had a different answer. Because it is still a relatively new format. Obviously, podcast is an evolution of radio, and there's been scripted radio drama and comedy for a long, long time. But this idea of the new medium of podcasting, there's no standard to it. It's not like when you go to write a movie and people expect it's going to look a certain way, or if I'm writing a play and I'm sending that to a theater, they're expecting it to look a certain way. Particularly because we're producing this ourselves, no one has to expect it to look any way except us and our actors. So we actually write our scripts in screenplay format. And I'm realizing now I did not put a picture of the script in my slides, did I?
No.
I'm sorry. So I'd be happy to share one with you later if anybody wants to see it. But we use a screenplay format to write our scripts. So what that means at a very basic level is a scene heading at the top, interior office, daytime, and then a description of what we might be hearing. So let's say sound effects, people going about their business, someone typing furiously at a computer, the door opens, it's Skip, and then Skip's name and Skip's dialogue, and go on from there. I like to put a lot of description about the sound effects into my script, because when the actor reads it, oh, great, we have a transcript, which is very close to what our scripts look like. So you can see right at the top, we have a sound of a train station, there's a whistle, 2 pairs of footsteps walking to meet each other. So we know right away, before anybody has spoken, that 2 people are meeting at a train station. And this is actually a really great example, because that's not how this episode was scripted. When I wrote the script, it started with our Tom Cruise character, Chet Phillips, already on the train, and he opened his briefcase and this mission tape started to play, and he heard his mission. And when we edited it together, Pete said, it just kind of starts, and I don't know where he is, and I don't know what he's doing. So could you come up with, could you maybe write a couple of lines for yourself as a train conductor? So that's exactly what I did. And just by saying, good evening, Herr Phillips, your luggage has already arrived and you're seated in cabin 5. And we then put in the sounds of the train and the 2 guys meeting each other in front of the train. Then suddenly, before anybody even spoke, we understood we're in a train station. There are 2 people meeting, and okay, please go to cabin 5. We hear the door slide open, the door slide closed, and he sits down. Now I know, okay, he's sitting down in the train, and we're listening to him open his briefcase. So it was an important lesson right away, first scene of the first episode, that you really have to fill in the visual details. So what I'd like to do now is I actually have an example of a scene from our latest episode where Pete was very gracious enough to send me a clip without any music or sound effects in it. And then we're going to play it again with the sound effects and music laid in, just to give you a sense of how important those things are to create the visual picture in your mind. So this scene is supposed to be set on a submarine. They're racing to get to Antarctica, where their arch nemesis is hiding out. And we'll play it first with no effects. So, go ahead.
We've been hung out to dry before. We just need to rethink the mission. This is going to be fine if we just put our minds together and have enough time to regroup.
Land ho! Plan to surface in 5 minutes.
What the hell? We've got incoming!
From where?
15 degrees starboard, and 10 degrees port side, and from the air. Surface as fast as you can! All hands, abandon ship!
Hello and goodbye, dear friends.
Oh, no.
Welcome to Antarctica. Enjoy your watery graves.
Oh no!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh, water coming in! Oh!
All right, so the actors do a great job of selling it. It sounds like they're in some sort of distress. They'll, Chris is crying, "Oh, there's water coming in at the end." But I think a couple of things are important. One, there's no atmosphere of the submarine. There's no sound effects of them getting hit by missiles. There's no sense of danger beyond the actor saying that they're in danger. And also that voice, that very gravelly voice, is the character of the Admiral saying, "Oh, hello, welcome to your watery grave." He sounds like he's in the same room as them, but it's not the case at all. So let's listen now and hear what Pete does with that and works his magic with music and sound effects.
We've been hung out to dry before. We just need to rethink the mission. This is going to be fine if we just put our minds together and have enough time to regroup.
Land ho! Plan to surface in 5 minutes.
What the hell? We've got incoming!
From where?
15 degrees starboard, and 10 degrees port side, and from the air. Surface as fast as you can! All hands, abandon ship!
Hello and goodbye, dear friends.
Oh, no.
Welcome to Antarctica. Enjoy your watery graves.
Oh no!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Water coming in! Oh!
So that's a much more exciting scene to me. Right from the beginning, I don't know if you hear, but there's a very subtle atmosphere of the submarine with the sonar beeping in the background. So I know that I'm on a submarine, and the Admiral's voice coming over the PA system. So oh, he's not in the same room as them, and the water rushing at the end. It makes it just so much more exciting, and I'm so lucky to have a great collaborator in Pete who knows, who's just so skilled at making those things happen. And he's also very open to suggestions. So he'll work his magic, and then he'll send it to me and John, and we'll give him some notes to say, "Oh, you know what? That explosion should happen just a little bit later, and don't let's skip Scream for quite so long." And he'll go back and twiddle with it, and he'll send it back, and yes, that is perfect. And that's a really special thing, and it's something that I encourage you to seek out. The success that I've had, or that the Porch Room has had, the three of us, I think stems from a place of friendship. It's because we are three people who really love each other, and we really love what we do together, and that shows in the work, and it makes the work enjoyable to do, and it fuels our creativity. And I think that when you do something you love with people you love, it shines through. And we feel very much the same way about the cast. It's been a joy to work with everybody on this show, both the actors and behind the scenes. Paige is also a writer on the show, and someone like Karen, who devoted so much time to just coming in, making sure everything sounded good for us. And we were just having fun and enjoying our time together. It was one of the reasons I'm so eager to get back to being in person. But it also really kept me sane during staying at home for 2 years, because we were still making something that was so joyous and positive. And so no matter what your show is, if it's something you're writing, it could be a very serious drama. It could be a comedy, or it could be an interview show or a documentary show. But if you have a love for it, and you put, that passion into it, and you are working with other people that you love, I think that you are setting yourself up for success. So try and find those connections. And there are a lot of podcasters out there that do everything completely on their own. Maybe they have actors reading their words, but they're writing the script, they're directing it, they're editing it, they're putting the music in, and I have nothing but admiration for people that have the ability to do that. I would not be able to make Mission Rejected on my own, in the same way I wouldn't be able to make CS Radio on my own, because I love collaboration. That's, you know, I think partially coming from the theater, where unless you're doing a one person show, you can't do it on your own. And even then, you probably have a director and a designer, and everybody feeds each other. So I love the collaborative nature of working on audio fiction and podcasts in general. So that's a place that audio fiction and informative podcasting really cross for me, because I have a small team on CS Radio, but it's sprung from the same place. We started that 7 years ago, and I went to my coworker. We both work in the career advising office at the university, so we help students and alumni with their career path. And I knew she liked listening to podcasts, and I like listening to podcasts. So I said, "What if we did a podcast?" And she was like, I wanted to ask you the same thing. So we were coming from the same place already. And we were very bold, and we just recorded an episode without telling anybody. We interviewed a pretty prominent person on campus for our first episode, talked to him about the many different paths his career had taken, and we recorded it with a USB mic. And I did some very basic editing on it, and then we played it for our boss and said, "We had this idea. We went ahead and did it. Could you see this coming out every week from our office?" And she said, "Yes. What a great idea." And so with CS Radio, our job is not so much to entertain as it is to inform. So you can see here now, we've been doing it for 7 years. We've done over 150 episodes, and we have to keep that fresh. There's really only so much you could talk about in the world of career development, but we try and bring a fresh perspective to each episode, or we have a great guest come on. And I feel the same thing of what I said about collaboration is really true. When I started the show, my co-host, her name was Milen, and we just had really great conversations. We really like each other. We're really good friends, and that comes across. And people would say to us, "We like listening to the show because it sounds like you're just two friends having a conversation about something you know a lot about." Well, that was true. She and I have a good time together. We have a very casual way of speaking to each other, but we are also very good at our jobs. I hope. She is very good at her job, and I'm okay. So we know that that people respond to that, and that it makes our guests very much at ease too. One of the things we found was a lot of people at the university, our colleagues, and the faculty members, not so much students, were very eager to talk about themselves, but the adults were very hesitant to come on the show. But we just tried to make it a welcoming, casual thing, and then you sort of forget that you're recording a podcast, and you start just having a real conversation. And we have had really amazing conversations that have gone in really amazing different directions. And we've done some really creative things as well. We've done practice interviews with students on one episode. Probably the craziest thing we did was for our 100th episode, we played a game of Dungeons and Dragons and tried. So it was a 2-part thing. Someone pointed out to me that there was a lot of similarities between playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons and going on a finance interview, where they ask you a lot of problem questions, what they call a case interview, where you're given a scenario that you have to solve as part of your job interview. So for the first part of the episode, we had a bunch of experienced interviewers play a game of Dungeons and Dragons and then tell me how they felt it related to the types of interviews that they give. And in the second episode, I had 2 really experienced Dungeons and Dragons players, one of which was my good friend Pete. They did a case interview, and tried to work it out as they would approach it if they were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it went amazingly well. So even in an informational interview style show, we were able to do something that was really fun and creative, and they were, two of our most popular episodes because it was so very different. So I encourage you that no matter what kind of show you're thinking about producing, that you embrace your crazy ideas. That if it seems like it's sort of far out of field, maybe it wouldn't work, I say at least try it. At least try it and see, because you won't know until you do, and see how people respond to it. And even though that was, I think this week we recorded episode 157. So it was 57 episodes, which was 2 years ago. People still ask when we're going to play the next game of Dungeons and Dragons. So we joke that we might have to start a career services Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and that'll be my third podcast. But again, I rely so much on my team. I have a new co-host now. His name is Natty, but it's the same idea. Our dynamic is different than it was when it was me and Lynn, but we are friends and we are good at our jobs and we have different perspectives on things. And he just brings so much to the conversation. I love talking with him. And then we have a student editor. It used to be Karen, but she graduated. So I have a young man named Sam now, and he edits that conversation and takes out the pauses and the stumbles, and just brings the best of it. And he recently said to me something that I thought was really smart, and something I want to pass on to you, which is, he said, I want to make this sound good, and I want to make it a tight show, but I want to keep the essence of you and Natty. So when you guys, if you stumble or make a mistake and it's funny, I want to keep that in, because that's who you guys are. You stumble and you make some mistakes and you laugh about it. He said, if it was a big goof, I take it out, but I want to keep the essence of you, because the show, even when there's a guest, the show is spending 30 minutes with you two, whether it's, me and Natty or me and Milan. So think about that too. Don't get too hung up on, oh, this has to be perfect. Oh, this has to be so, we have to really take out all the ums and the uhs and the stumbles. When we started Mission Rejected, I was really very firm with Pete and John that it had to launch at a certain date. I wanted it to come out at the end of February. We gave ourselves enough runway. I said, because if we start tinkering with it and go, oh, it would be, maybe like Chris should say this, or Nas should be able to, I was like, if we do that, then it'll never be done. Let's make it the best we can in the time that we have and put it out, and it will keep getting better as we do it, hopefully. And I think it was the best decision that we made, because I think I was absolutely right. We could have gotten hung up on trying to make it perfect, and we might have killed some of the spontaneous joy of doing it. And we have gotten better, hopefully, over the last 3 years at making it sound really good. But I'm very proud of that first episode, and I'm really proud that we did not get too hung up on it. Much in the same way as when I did the first episode of CS Radio, we just did it. And we did it and said to our boss, hey, we did this. Can we keep doing more? So I think that the podcasting medium, the digital space in general, gives you the freedom to play and to manipulate and to create outrageous things out of nothing, but also give yourself a goal. Like, don't let yourself get hung up on this has to be perfect. Get it to where you want it to be, absolutely, but don't let the sort of freedom of that digital space, that openness, that infinite digital realm, hang you up. Just focus on getting something out there. And because it's a show, right? Because you're producing this for an audience, your audience will tell you if it's working or not. And you will find that audience. You will find them, whether that's through social media, is really where we interact mostly with our audience, or if they write into the show. People write into CS Radio a lot to ask questions or give us feedback. So that's a great thing too. But, I'm here with you this morning because there was a fan of the show who asked me to be here, and I'm really touched and grateful. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but I'm also so happy to answer any questions that you might have for me.
Okay. Uh, okay, thank you for that, Michael. Thank you for your sharing your knowledge and your passion with us. So, do you have any questions of the 7 remaining students here? But don't worry, this is recorded. The other students, they're probably busy with their assessments. They'll be seeing this, they'll be watching this video.
I understand completely. Working at a university, I know how busy students are.
Okay, so do you have any questions? Because I also have mine. Okay. Okay, so maybe they're still thinking about their questions, or maybe they're just shy. Okay, so my question, Michael, is that in Mission Rejected, how do you handle criticisms? Like yes, or even it's constructive or it's not constructive. Because I remember on the podcasting website, because I don't know why this person says that I don't like the voice acting. Like what the like did you, I know you read that because you replied to him or her.
Yes, I do remember that one in particular. um, uh, Criticism is tough, right? Nobody likes to be criticized. It is always great to receive constructive criticism. We're lucky that we've had we have not had a lot of negative feedback, but I think that it's important to listen to it. And, you can be upset for a minute, and then you have to decide whether or not that there's anything you can take from that criticism and make it better. So, for example, I did get I got a message, I think it was on Facebook or maybe by an email, of someone who said, I'm such a big fan of the show. I really like it, but it's getting hard to listen to because it's like the last couple of episodes have been so much louder. And I listen in my car and it's very hard to hear it because it's so loud. And I thought, I haven't noticed it getting louder, but I said, I better tell Pete that. And I passed that on. And he said, I'm really not doing anything differently, but let me think about it, because if he feels that way, maybe other people feel that way. And Pete did change something very minor in the way he was finishing the episode, essentially the way he was mastering the final MP3. And the next episode, the same person wrote me back and said, "Oh, thank you. That was so much better." Okay. So to me, it sounded, the episode that he thought was too loud and the episode he thought was perfect, to my ears sounded very similar. But we did, Pete worked, again, I always say he worked his magic. We made some adjustment on that feedback and it made that person happy, which is great. Now, if somebody says, "I don't like the voice acting. I don't think you're funny." Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, but that's not something I think I'm going to respond to because you can't make people you can't make people like something. How many times has somebody tried to get you to watch something? They say, "Oh, you're going to love this. This is my favorite thing." And I'm like, "Oh, that was okay." So I remember that comment in particular because that person was leaving only negative comments on a lot of shows. And I was like, maybe, what do you like? So I try not to, respond to that, things like that, because if you don't like it, you don't like it. And that's okay. There may be, you might like the show and there might be an episode you don't like. There might be a joke you don't like. We've all had that experience. But we just try, we do try and listen to particularly what people respond to positively, so we can give them more of that. And if people have questions about things or constructive criticism, we try and take that into account. And luckily, no one has written anything really nasty about us. I've gotten similar feedback on CS Radio. We had someone wrote in who said, like, I really like your show, or I want to like it, but I can't hear Michael. He's too quiet, which is not anything anyone has ever said to me in my life. I'm sort of a loud theatrical person in real life. So to hear that this person thought they couldn't hear me over my microphone was interesting. But I was like, this person took the time to write in and say they couldn't hear me. What can I do differently? Should I change the settings on my mic? Should I get a new mic? Should I sit closer? And I don't remember exactly how I adjusted it, but I did. And she wrote back a few weeks later and was like, oh, everything's sounding really good. So, I do take those sorts of things to heart. Because if someone's taking the time to tell you, I want to like this, but there's something that's stopping me and it's a technical thing, then let's try and fix that technical thing. If they want to like it, but they can't because they don't like this character, or like, I don't like spies. Somebody did leave that review once. I don't really like spies. Then I don't really know why you listen to the episode, but thanks for stopping by. So that's how we try and handle it.
Okay. Okay. I think I've also mentioned that I didn't like one of the characters, but it's okay.
What can you do? And
Yeah, no, what can you do, right?
sometimes we want you not to like the character. But that's it's okay. You like the show.
She's
you can
meant
deal
to
with
be
character.
hated, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. For CS Radio, how do you pick your guests other than they're the experts on this type of topic? Other than that,
Yeah, that's a great question because we do several different things. Sometimes we're just pulling from our own colleagues. I'm lucky that my office has about 30 people that work in it, and they all have really different backgrounds. So it's good to be able to bring in a lot of different perspectives from people who are literally, in the office already. Beyond that, we really keep an eye on what's happening on campus. So we have a lot of people. For example, we did an episode with someone from our athletics department because there was a law change this year in America about letting college athletes have commercial endorsements. That used to be illegal, but the law changed, and now, so let's say if Nike sneakers wanted a Penn basketball player to endorse Nike sneakers, that student can do that now within a certain set of guidelines. So we wanted to bring someone in from the athletics department and a student athlete to come in and talk about that. So that was something that was sort of happening on campus and in the news, and we were able to bring people in to talk about things. Because it's a university, I have a huge network of students. If they do something notable, we'd like to bring a student on, or alums. We'll be bringing on an alum next week who actually wrote to me and said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I did this project while I was at Penn, and now I have my PhD, and I'm doing this big art installation in Mexico based on my thesis, and could I come talk about it? Yeah, absolutely. And then sometimes we're lucky enough to be introduced to people from outside of the university sphere, either because we reach out to them or somehow they're connected with us. So very recently, last month, we did a live episode with a gentleman named Kevin Curry, who is an Instagram influencer. He is a chef and a fitness guru. He does a lot of things about wellness and food. And it was an amazing conversation. He was such a great guy. And we never would have been connected with him had someone else at the university not introduced us. So it's really nice to be able to leverage that network. And, that's true on Mission Rejected, too. We have to find guest stars, right? And sometimes we make those connections through people we know. We said, we heard this person on this show. Who do we know that can get to that person? So, all right. Oh, well, we can ask Anne, who can ask Shannon, who can get that guy. So that's how a lot of those things happen. And then sometimes you just have to go out and, and just ask, just say this, like, I really want to talk to this person. Let's try and get them on the podcast, and hopefully they say yes. And sometimes they say no because where CS Radio is not a very big podcast and they're not interested. And that's okay too. And we'll figure out another way to cover that topic. In the case of CS Radio, it's really nice that we have a student producer, because I think if we were doing it at a very professional level for a studio or for a radio station, there would be a producer assigned to getting the guests. And so our student producer not only helps with the actual logistics of like inviting people onto the show, but the student knows what people want to talk about. Like our audience for that show are students at the university. So I can say to Sam, like, what are you and your friends talking about? And who would you like to hear from? And that informs our show a lot.
Okay. Speaking of of a guest, I don't know. Can you reveal to us that Hollywood person that you had connections with that you want to be on the show on Mission Rejected, or no, or is it just a surprise? We'll just wait for it. What?
No, I can
Or
tell
would
you.
okay.
I don't even know if you all know who she is.
Okay.
It's an actress named Kate McCucci.
Oh,
She does a lot of cartoon voices.
Mm.
She was part of a comedy team called Garfunkel and Oates.
Oh, okay. I know her.
Yeah,
I know her.
She did a lot of funny songs. She's been on a lot of sitcoms. We went to school with her brother, and we really we would really like to have her on the show, but she is, we have to save it for a really special occasion, let's say, because I think she would do it, but she is really in demand specifically as a voice actress. So it would have to be something really special for her to do it. So
Okay.
Kate, if you're watching, we would love to have you on the show.
Okay. It's better than Danny DeVito. Okay.
Yeah, that's certainly not Danny DeVito.
We can't get Danny DeVito. Okay. So do you have any the students? Do you have any questions you can type on the chat box? Because did any of the students here had something to do with the Christmas audio? None. Okay, so me and Michael are just gonna talk. Okay.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
Hello, Silver. Hello.
Good evening, Sir Michael. I have a question. My question is, sir, how old are you when you start doing what you love, like podcasting, radio, and what keeps you going, knowing that there's a lot of discouragements and downfalls in that field or in that career?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I would say that I've always tried to do what I love. I went to school for theater and playwriting, which has, always been a passion of mine. It took a while. I would say the year I turned 30 was a turning point in my creative career. After I left school, Pete and I moved to New York together. We were trying to be actors or writers or whatever, just the very stereotypical thing of just moving to New York and trying to become famous. And a couple of things happened. I moved to New York City on September 8th of 2001. So within 3 days, some really terrible things happened in New York. And in fact, I was very excited. I moved to New York. I had already booked an acting job, and I was going to start rehearsals like at the end of September. And September 11th happened, and that just never, like, that show just never happened. And it was very, it was very dispiriting. I was very happy. I was very lucky to be living with Pete because we kept each other's spirits up, and we would say, should we write something funny right now? It doesn't feel very funny, which is a conversation that we have revisited in recent times. And I think at that time, we kind of talked ourselves up into trying to write something funny, and it felt good for us. So we're really glad now that we have a way to put some positivity out into the world to a larger audience. But so I kind of all through my 20s, I struggled to find a way to do what I love in any sort of meaningful way. And then a couple of things happened. One, I got my current job. I got the job at the University of Pennsylvania, which I really just needed to pay the bills. I have been there almost 20 years now. I never, ever thought that was going to happen, but it's a really special place. I had a really supportive boss who hired me because I told her in my interview that if I got a theater job, I would have to quit. And she said, well, you're the most honest person I've ever met. She hired me. And she was someone who appreciated the arts and really supported me. And it was a job that, like I go to work and I work from 9 to 5, and then I don't have to worry about work anymore. I can think about my creative life, and then I have the security. And because it's a university, there are resources. I met students. I got involved with the art scene on the campus. A lot of the people that are in Mission Rejected, I met through the university, through either my job or by doing plays at the university. So that really changed my life. And having that stability towards the end of my 20s, Pete and John and I had a conversation where we just were like, we miss doing the porch room. We hadn't done anything together in a long time. And John had the opportunity to have free use of a theater in his neighborhood for a summer. And they said, you could put up a show. And we did. And we did it just for the joy of doing it and being together. And the play, one of the play, we put up a series of short one-act plays, and one of those plays ended up, it was a bit of a road, but within like the next 2 years, won a lot of awards and got us published, which got us an agency in New York that bought our next play, and suddenly we were mildly successful. And so and that's why I really felt like it was just because we did it for the joy of doing it. We weren't trying to become famous anymore. And we produced something really good, and people responded to it, and then good things happened because of that. So that play got published the year I turned 30. And since then, I've made a really concentrated effort to keep doing what I love with the people I love and try and have whatever level of success I have. And it is very hard. There's a lot of rejection. We were completely unsure if this podcasting thing was going to take off. But even when we would do plays, sometimes they'd be huge hits and sometimes they would be not so huge hits. We got some, talk about criticism. We did a play in New York that got one of the harshest reviews I've ever gotten. But I think I learned something from it. Like he was harsh, but he wasn't wrong. So I tried to take that to heart. And I just stick with my philosophy. That if you're doing it because you love it and you put your love into it, then people will respond to that. And that has happened with Mission Rejected. And what keeps us going is people responding to the show. It's because it's out on the internet. Like people can come to my play, and let's say 500 people saw one of my plays in a run. And even if all 500 of those people said it was great, it's nothing like being on the internet, right? For good or bad. Everybody has a really instant response, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or sending you an email. Luckily, we had a really good response, and we built a community. And we talk to our fans on Discord, and then you also have the people in your not your real life, but the people you see every day, my colleagues, my family, and my friends, and people I know. I recently ran into a friend of mine that I'd not seen in a long time, someone I went to high school with, And he was so happy to see me, and he was with his kids, and he said, "This is Mike who makes the podcast." And I was like, "You listen to my show?" He's like, "No, we love it." And we heard the joke you made about our high school teacher. I was like, I did name it after the German teacher. So like that kind of stuff is great. And people write in and say they listen to the show as a family, or that, you know, it's keeping them happy during a sad time. That's enough reason for me to do it. I'm very personally fulfilled, and it has led to some really good professional things. We all signed with an agent because of Mission Rejected, and we've had some talks with people that we would never have had talks with because they were interested in Mission Rejected. Not all things I'm allowed to talk about, but really exciting things, like things that you dream would happen. And even if they don't go anywhere, I can say I got to have that conversation. You know, somebody said, "You seem like a fun person. You seem like a good writer. Let's talk about, you know, working on a project together." And you're like, "Oh, okay." So I'm not going to stop. I'm very, like I said, I'm very personally contented doing it, and I would love for it. I mean, I love my job at the university, but of course I would love my only job to be writing and producing and creating. And I hope, you know, now that I've turned 40, you know, I'm hoping that if the decade of 30s was getting to this point, then the decade of my 40s will be, you know, really turning into professional full-time success. So it's a long road. I hope you all get there very quickly. But if you love it and you are finding personal fulfillment in it in some way, do it, and do what you have to do to keep a roof over your head.
Speaking of networks, guys, here in the Philippines, we have our government is very supportive of the arts, and
It's great.
okay, so there's PETA, not the PETA version in America. The Philippine Educational Theater Association is currently giving online classes. It's very affordable because it's online. So you try to search for that. I'm actually enrolled in it, and the classes are in May. So I'm sure you guys have time. And then also, guys, follow the pages of the Film Development Council of the Philippines. Their classes are very cheap, like 200 pesos per class. It's very cheap, so follow them. It's all about like researching those affordable classes here in the Philippines, and then there you'll be gaining networks and gaining a lot, and then knowing a lot of people. Because I've already started it last year, and it's been amazing actually. I mean, I right now I'm a member of the audiovisuals uh, group network here in the Philippines. Okay, so just find friends, because FSU can only offer like, you know, the academic focus, but you have to go out of the school. Okay, and also yes, collaborate with your friends if you want to make art, like especially the audio play. Yes, collaborate. Okay, so Debbie, are you still here? Do you have a
Yes,
question?
ma'am.
Yes.
So I actually have two questions for Sir Michael.
Mm.
The first question will be, what is something people seem to misunderstand about your career, sir? And the second question is, what advices can you give towards beginners or future broadcasters?
Two really good questions. Thank you. What do people misunderstand about my career? That's a great question. So I would say that my colleagues at the university and my friends outside of the arts, let's say, I don't know that they understand it at all. I mean, they understand that I write and act, and they understand that I make a podcast, but I don't know that they I think some of them wonder how, like, why do I keep doing it if it's not my like source of income? And it's because it's like it's the source of my life more than the source of my income. My job, which I'm very lucky that I like very much, is the source of my income, but my creative career is my soul. I get a lot of questions from my coworkers at the university about how I strike the balance. How do I have time to make a podcast or do a play and work? And it's hard. It's hard. I have a lot of energy. I can go on a webinar at 10 o'clock at night in the Philippines. I don't have a family. I mean, I don't have children. So in that sense, it's actually, again, it's really nice that I have partners. John and Pete have children. John likes to work very early in the morning. I do not. I would prefer to work at night, as would Pete. So Pete and I can get John's notes in the morning because he's gotten up early and written something or done an edit. Pete and I can talk in the afternoon, and then I can work on it at night and send it, and the cycle just starts again. And then I send it to John, and John gets up really early, so we complement each other. And it's hard, and I've made the decision to prioritize, making my art, let's say. So if somebody asks me to go do something and it's time to work on Mission Rejected, I will probably choose to work on Mission Rejected. Like, oh, last Sunday of the month, I have to record. Like, my family understands that. My mother will say, oh, we want to go do, oh, but not the last Sunday of the month. Like, exactly, because I'm going to be busy all day. So as people who know me well know that it's my life. And I think people either understand it or they don't. I don't know that there's any particular misunderstanding. And I'm so lucky that I work in a place, I think, one, because it's a career advising office, and we tell, like, our job is to tell people to do what they love or follow their passions and their interests. So they're already coming from that place. So that's really nice that I have that support. I think my life would be very different if I worked in a place that discouraged me from following, my passion, or said, you really have to be on call 24/7. If I had a boss who was like, I might call you at 9 o'clock at night and want to report, that's not going to fly with my life. I need the flexibility that my current job has. So, which was another important part, as I mentioned, of like finding success, because I found something that gave me stability, but still allowed me to have the time and flexibility to work my other art. As for advice for first-time broadcasters or podcasters, I other than what I've already said, I would stress, go and do it. Go and try it. Make an episode of something, whatever it is you want to do, whether it's scripted or informative. Make an episode of something just to try it. You don't have to put it out in the world. You can do it just to see how it goes. Maybe it'll turn out great and you're going to want to share it, but do it so that you have the experience of doing it. We had never made an audio production before. We had only made theater and film. And while there were certain skills, particularly in the editing and things like that, that overlapped, it's different. And we had to learn that. And also learn by listening. Listen to things that you admire. Think about what are the shows or the scripts or the podcasts that I admire. Why do I like it? What would I do different? What are the parts that I really like about it that I would want to emulate? How do they do it? How can I make my thing sound like this, but have a unique voice? The more that you listen, the more you learn. I do a little less of it now. I try and listen to as many podcasts as I can. But when we started, I really didn't realize how many audio fiction productions were out there when we started. I knew there were some, and I knew because I grew up listening to comedy and drama on the radio that obviously audio drama was something that existed. I just didn't realize how many people were doing it in the podcast world until we went to this film festival, and met people who were doing it, and they're like, "Oh, have you heard this show and this show?" And I hadn't heard of any of it. So just really listening to a lot of things. And one of the important things we learned from that was what don't we want this show to be? We decided after listening to something like, we don't want our show to have a narrator. We don't want anyone to say, "Meanwhile, in the submarine, Skip is nervous." We just wanted it to play out like a movie in your head. So listen, you learn by doing, and you learn by listening or reading or watching things and taking what you like and throwing away what you don't like.
Okay. So are there any more questions? I'm also checking my notes if I have any questions. Um, okay, so actually I don't have any further questions. But
I see there. Peter just asked in the chat, if other than
okay.
Mission Rejected, are there other stories you recorded? Not yet, but we are working on it. We are definitely interested in making more audio works, both serious and comedic. So there are two projects that we're working on right now. Pete and I are working on something together, and then we got together with a bunch of other podcasters that we admire, and we're trying to create something together. And both of those things are getting close to fruition. So I'm particularly really interested in doing more audio productions. Both, I would like to write. We've done a lot of comedy. I'd like to write something maybe more serious, and we're also working on maybe doing something musical, because Pete is a very talented musician. So I'm really excited by the possibilities of doing other audio stories.
And the
But
puppet show.
there's nothing else out there to listen to yet.
You forget the puppet show, Michael.
Oh, Chris really would love us to do a puppet show, and maybe someday we will do a puppet show.
A mission rejected. But Nazla will be the only human to be on the show.
That's right.
Okay. My God, I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, other than actually, you have. I wonder if any of the students have listened to one or more episodes of Mission Rejected. Has any one of you listened to the episodes? To one of the episodes? Um, if you haven't been to the episode where Michael was voicing his main character on Mission Rejected, Larry Bass baritone, can you give us a voice of Larry right now?
Sure.
Can you do that?
So Larry is another actor character. He's a sort of frenemy of Bowden's, and he's not a very good actor, and he's based on someone that I know in real life who is a bit of a hammy actor, and he talks like this, and he's very absent. What's the word? Absent-minded. Absent-minded. So Larry is very difficult for me to do for too long, because he's a very gravelly voice. But I do like doing. I went to school for acting as well as writing. So all three of us have put ourselves into the show many times, doing very, very silly voices.
Has any of the students here active before the pandemic in the theater arts here in FSU? Any of you active in theater? Tubag pud mo eh. Okay.
Nine Mom, pero we really love to watch some theater plays in university days. There's a lot of theater plays in our university days, but we're not able to do a theater play. But we love to really see or watch a theater play, ma'am.
Okay. So, but you're not one. Have you acted in a play, Silver? Or just
In
watch?
my senior high,
Ah,
ma'am.
senior high.
In my
Oh.
senior high.
Okay. Because I understand that FSU theater arts is not that active. They have plays like every other year. Okay. But Michael, I know that you also guested in other shows. You were in that Chinese podcast about the Chinese stories, and you played.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was in a show called the Plum Forest
Mm.
Podcast, which is he's trying to tell Chinese fables to an English speaking audience. So in one episode, I was a man who could turn himself into a bear, and in another episode, I was a very happy goat.
Mm.
And that he reached out to me on Twitter and said uh, he actually had not heard me do Larry. He liked my narration on the Mission Rejected trailer
Mm-hmm.
on the commercial, and it was great. I enjoy guesting on other shows. I'd like to do more of that as well, and I think I'm
Mm.
going to get the
But
chance
your
soon.
voice of Larry is the same as the man bear, or was it different?
It's
It's
close.
close,
It's
right?
close
Mm.
because it was deep and gravelly, but the bear was a little angrier and a little louder. But yes, I'm not. I'm not a professional voice artist, so I don't do a lot of voices. But I think I'm a trained actor, so I can do a lot of characters. So, but yes, the bear and Larry were pretty close.
So what's but theater actors are very good voice actors. But what's the difference between them? Because voice actors study voice acting, and theater actors are what's
Yeah,
the limit with the
So
theater actors?
yeah, there's a lot of
Mm.
similarities because it's all about inhabiting a character, and if you've ever seen a really talented voice artist, like I think about somebody like Hank Azaria or Harry Shearer who voiced on The Simpsons. Harry Shearer can do a whole scene as Mr. Burns and Smithers by himself, right? He's playing both parts and he'll do it back and forth. Um, so I think the big difference is just technically knowing how to make your voice do different things. There are some people that can make their voice sound so different that when you like see them do it in person, you're like, how is that voice coming out of your mouth? I can't do that. I don't have the training for it. I don't have the skills to do it. I think even when I do a voice that's different from mine, my speech patterns, the way I pronounce certain words are always the same. So a really talented voice artist um, who can do a lot of different voices really is able to change the way that they speak. I think in tone, in pitch, in even in the pronunciation of things. So some people are really good at doing accents. I can do a couple. It's about having a good ear for it. So it's a real talent. But I think the acting skills are the same.
Mm.
Making choices and trying to be real. Those are the same. Most of our actors on the show are theater actors. That's we met them doing plays, but I've been blown away by some of our guests who are more voice actors who will if they're not able to record with us, what they'll do is they'll send in their lines that they recorded on their own, and they'll give us 3 or 4, sometimes 5 takes, and a really good voice person will usually send 5 completely different takes that'll give us options on, because I'm not in the room or on the call with them saying, well, this should be softer or angrier, or this is a funny line. So they'll do them all these different ways just instinctively. So that's another skill that a voice actor, I think, brings to the table. But even our theater actors, Chris in particular, who plays Skip, loves to do a scene 3 or 4 times, different ways, or until he gets it the way he thinks it should be in his head. Um, so people bring different ways of working to the table, and there's some overlap with theater and voice actors, but I think voice actors just have a training or a way their brain works that is a little bit different.
My favorite voice actors on the show is Chris. I like his voice because even his voice also as Paige's. It's very high pitched. It's very
Yeah.
like even if you transport it to cartoons, Paige's voice and Skip's voice and Chris's voice, it really fits even in the cartoons. Um, I also like Bob's voice because obviously he voiced a lot of characters on the show.
So Bob is one of the, so I actually am amazed that Bob isn't like on every podcast because he is someone who can do any voice I ask of him. He is such a talented voice actor. Again, I met him doing a play. I knew one of his coworkers who knew I was directing a play and said, "Are you still looking for somebody to play this part? Because I think this guy I teach with would be great." I said, "Yes, I'd love, please send him over." So he came and auditioned and he was great and I hired him. And then he came to the first rehearsal and he said, "I'd like to play this with an American Southern accent, like a really deep drawl." And I went, "Oh, but we're doing Shakespeare." I was like, "That would be interesting." He said, "Let me just try it." And he did this voice, and we were like on the floor in stitches because it was so funny and it was so right for the character. And then the next time I worked with him, he I was working on a production of Macbeth, and he did this amazing Scottish accent that was so good. I went, and we were just gearing up to do Mission Rejected at that time, and I said, "Bob is going to do so many voices for me." And I always know that if we can't find a guest star, we're just like, well, maybe Bob will do it. Bob will do it, and he'll sound different than the Admiral and different than Security Guy and different than Archie. He's incredibly talented, and I don't know. I don't quite know how he does it.
Is he a working voice actor? Like
He's not.
he's
He
not.
this is his. This is his. He's very passionate about performance. When I met him, he was a teacher,
Mm.
and he's switched careers now. But it's not his job, and I don't believe that other than Mission Rejected and Oz 9, in which he was playing his Mission Rejected character, he's done other work. But I keep telling him he should advertise his services.
Mm-mm. And I also love how many roles did Bob? Who is Bob anyway? Wait, maybe they don't know who Bob voiced.
Oh, sure. So yeah, we didn't really talk about Bob, but the main villain of the show is a character called the Admiral, who is based on the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. He's a crazy character with a crazy voice. You heard him in the submarine scene. But in addition to that, Bob has played the security. We call him Security Guy. He's just like every security guard in every episode. He played a character called Archie, who was in a bunch of the second season. That was a Michael Caine impersonation, a British voice. He has played so many small. He played one of the old men in the condo. I mean, I think I totaled it up recently, and Bob's done something like 15 different voices on the show. So it's, he's very talented. We're very lucky to have him.
Oh God, I forgot her name. And the other one who voiced a lot of characters.
Jill.
Jill. Yeah, Jill.
Yeah. So Jill and Bob are sort of our
Mm.
instant ensemble, right? They, in particular, in the first season, Jill didn't have a regular character. She would just play a different character every episode. But she was someone I'd worked with a lot, and she really surprised me with the range of different characters she can do. She doesn't really change her voice as much as Bob does, but she's very good at playing different characters, which is a different kind of skill than like changing your voice. But Lex is very different than Cassandra, who's very different than Annie. So she plays all these different voices. I think we've got one of the best casts in podcasting. They're really good actors. They're really committed to the show. They really love doing it. Again, I think like their enthusiasm comes through, which is why people like listening to it. So I think we're really fortunate to have people that can do a lot of different things. Which means we're not, we try and get as many guests on as we can, but we know that we can rely on on Bob and Jill, and me and Pete and John to fill in the gaps.
Okay. So, if are there still further questions, and if you want to talk to Michael about asking more questions, Michael, can you please like share your social media pages
Yes,
or
absolutely.
contact the?
Um, I'm going to put. You can contact me. I'm going to put an email address in the chat. You can contact me at the show email address or on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter. You can definitely reach me there, or also, I should say, on the show account too.
Mhm.
But please don't hesitate to follow up with me if you had any questions, or if you start working on a project, I'd love to know about it, or you wanted some advice. Like I said, people have helped me all the way, and I want to pay that back. So, um, and I really appreciate you coming this morning. It's a real honor to speak with you. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, so after this, you may be thinking of yourselves if I should be doing a nonfiction podcast or a fiction podcast. Like Michael said, just go for it. Okay. Um,
Yay.
okay. So we've come to the end of our program, and Silver has something to say. We want you to have this certificate.
Again, sir, good evening. There in in other side of the world because we're here in the Philippines. It's
Yeah.
here, and we're so happy that you're able to really share your experience with us. As a student who study communication, it's very important for us to really know about experiences of a lot of people, especially you, Sir Michael. It's an honor to really listen to your talks about podcasting. So we, the Com Guild, as the president of Communication Guild, our organization, we are giving this certificate of appreciation. um, Let me read the citation. Fathers Attorney Orius University, Butuan City, Arts and Sciences, Communicators Guild, giving this award a certificate of appreciation to um, Mr. J. Michael De Angeles,
The
if I'm right.
Angeles.
Angela,
The Angeles.
De Angeles, in a grateful recognition for sharing his valuable time and knowledge as the resource speaker on Introduction to Audio Play and Informative Podcast, held on 8th of April 2022 via Google Meet, signed Donna F. Espuerta Maelt, our Dean of Arts and Science. Sir, thank you so much for giving us your precious time. Ayan.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And since Mom Anne is not here, I'll be giving the final words. Thank you again, Michael, for being here with us, for sharing your knowledge and your passion with us. And like I personally, this Mission Rejected has helped me a lot during the pandemic, during my unemployment. Season 1 and 2, I've been repeating season 1 and 2. I'm catching up on season 3. I promise to uh, listen to the last episode. I don't know what's going on, but I read the spoilers, so yeah, okay, that's what happened. All right, but so it's actually a big shocker in the season 3 episode. Um, I didn't saw that coming, but but we've been loving it on Discord, and thank you so much. And I also, yeah, I've listened to CS. It also has helped me a lot, so thank you. And yeah, so to the people out there, like even your whatever podcast you may want, or whatever form of art you want to showcase to the world, you may not know if out there some person has gained on your art, has helped them. Okay, so I think that's it. That's my final words. Okay. So, oh, wait. We need to have a photo documentation. Okay. Before we
Okay.
end. Okay. So, uh, John very will help me with the screenshots. Let me just fix my layout first. Um, tiled. Okay. So everyone, can you please turn on your cameras, or you can settle with your photos? Okay. Okay. So please turn on your cameras, or you can settle with your photos. If mo kaligo, wa mo ka ilis, wa mo ka sudlay sa inyong mga yung mga buhok. Okay ra pod. Pero I know kuan, don't worry about the background. Bahala na siya. Ako na malong na sa likod gitabo na ako na kay pangit. Sige. So, okay, so John and I will just screenshot. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Wait muna. I didn't. Another one. Okay, I believe not everyone got to open their camera. So this is your one last chance to turn on your cameras. Okay. Dave, Angel, Ariani. Okay, so you settle with your photos. Okay. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, Nicholas. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. So that's the last photo. Thank you for having, for that all of us are here. Thank you so much. And this is recorded, so you can watch this. You can watch this again. Okay. So anyone want to say anything? Okay, so wala. Okay, so thank you so much. And if you still have something to say, if you don't have something to say, you can exit now. Exit now. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you daw, ingon ni Peter.
Thank you.
Peter
Thank
said
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
sir.
Oh.
God bless
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
you, Sir
sir.
Wala ka
Michael.
mag-thank you mo.